Glenn Clark Radio, talking about the sports you do and don't know, both within and surrounding Baltimore. Don't ask him about preseason games, oh no, stuffing things in Griffin Basso. Despite it being on the internet, he can call it what he wants, so Glenn Clark Radio, Glenn Clark Radio, Glenn Clark Radio. Duke sucks.
And no doubt the big news of the morning, John Harbaugh and the New York Giants finalizing a 5-year deal to make him the next head coach of the Giants. This was his choice. This was their top choice. This is why the Giants sped up the process and made sure they were in a position to hire. John Harbaugh spent the entire day yesterday at the Giants facility, the only facility that he ended up visiting. Now, the plan had been for the Tennessee Titans to fly into his Maryland home earlier this morning. They had the plane ready. They had the offer ready. They're willing to do what it took to get John Harbaugh, except the deal got done yesterday afternoon, stayed quiet till about 11:20 or so last night when it began to leak. The New York Post, I believe, was the first one. John Harbaugh had agreed to become the Giants head coach. The deal is not done. It's going to be finalized this morning. But
that's from the NFL Network this morning. John Harbaugh officially, or not quite officially, but he's going to be the Giants head coach. Let's be honest, that's always how this was going to play out. Good morning. It is a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. He's Griffin. And joining us in studio this morning, a buddy of ours. You read him in the Baltimore Banner. You yell at him on the internet. He understands and sometimes yells back, but normally doesn't. He's not like, in fact, I think he's said to me before that he was surprised by how long I continued engaging about certain things. I've got a little bit more of that Kevin Durant in me, I think. He is Kyle Goon, and he's with us in the studio this morning. It's good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming up here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Glenn. I've looked forward to this. In your, I know the viewers can't see past these cameras, but the palatial studios.
It is. It's
complex.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah, you guys have done some renovations here recently.
Yeah,
Wow,
lots of work. That waterfront view, you can't buy that.
The fountains. I would love a word with your fountain guy.
It was weird that we decided to go with, we took the water out and put chocolate in, but I feel like it really has added something to that palatial feel.
Wonka-esque.
Good to see you, bud. Thanks for coming in. So I guess let's just cover it because I don't really have a whole lot to say about John Harbaugh, and then we can talk about the things that are more pressing. I never thought John Harbaugh was going to be anywhere but the New York Giants, short of the Green Bay Packers job becoming available, which I think any coach in football would fight someone for the opportunity to be the Packers coach because it, to me, is the best job in American sports. But short of that, I never thought this was all that difficult to figure out, and all of the smoke screens that were being thrown out there that I happen to know there were people that were trying to suggest, oh, John really likes the Browns job. It never made any lick of sense that he would be anywhere but the Giants to me whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some good things with the setup. If Jackson Dart is healthy, if Malik Neighbors is healthy, obviously he brings Todd Monken to him if folks weren't aware of that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nice things to set it up, but I think the biggest thing with the Giants job is, before this run of, 4 head coaches that, are sort of had forgettable tenures. I mean, they had Tom Coughlin, they had some organizational stability, they won Super Bowls. Maybe, John is kind of seen by the Mara family as a next generation Tom Coughlin. That comparison might make a lot of sense to me. So, I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting job. I have spent several kind of fun minutes visualizing John being confronted by the New York City press and what that interaction will be like.
It's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah. If he thought he had it tough in Baltimore, it'll be interesting if the Giants have a losing record out of the gate in New York. But I do think in terms of organizational stability, I think John Harbaugh is a good coach. I think his time in Baltimore had run out, but I think he'll bring a level of organizational stability that franchise hasn't had in 10 years. And furthermore, they're kind of looking at him as the conquering hero here.
Well, that to me is why, I think that John Harbaugh would be excited about the job. The interesting question to me has been posed by a few people to me on social media, which is how good of a coach really is John Harbaugh at this point? Like, he's being treated like a godsend, and that's why this has got to be exciting for him, is he's being given carte blanche. Whatever you want, $20 million, you want to hire your own people, by all means. You can do whatever you want because you're the conquering hero. But how good of a football coach really is John Harbaugh? And it's a question that I don't know if I have an answer to definitively, because I am always the one who says anyone who dismisses stability and consistency, it's outrageous. Anyone who was celebrating the idea of John Harbaugh being fired, that's outrageous. My opinion was it was time, but celebrating it, that's nonsense. Still, I don't know exactly what you're getting. Does stability, does consistency, to your point, being a leader, is that enough to elevate a franchise back into Super Bowl contention? And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Super Bowls, I think the Giants, in many, many ways, are a ways off from winning a Super Bowl. I have an immediate question about what happens to Joe Schoen, the GM, the one who essentially handed the Eagles a Super Bowl by letting Saquon Barkley get away.
It's kind of a miracle that guy's still employed, if we're being honest.
I kind of wonder if he will be.
Watching
day.
that Hard Knocks, it was very difficult.
I honestly rewatched it when I was thinking about John taking, and it's worse than you remember. But it's just, I don't know. I think if John can get some sway, get some of his people who understand culture, the organization has just been bereft of culture. The organization has just been, they've had, the one really good year with Brian Daboll, but beyond that, I can't really think of a Giants team that's made any sort of impact whatsoever. And it's just, I value those same things that you value. I always thought that John did not get enough credit for making playoffs 12 of the 18 years. And talking to some people about John's leadership style after the fact, after he was fired, sort of got the sense that, you know what, like, if the Ravens aren't done with him, somebody else is going to want that. Somebody else is going to want to go to the playoffs 12 out of 18 years, or, that ratio. Somebody else is going to want to have a chance, because once the playoffs begin, sort of it's a little bit more free-for-all, as Ravens fans painfully know. So getting there is the first step, and consistently getting there and having a chance to consistently have a winner and just have a shot at winning a Super Bowl is the first part of it. And I think John will help that franchise do that.
And I think I'm inclined to agree. And I think it's one of the things that we even said in the late stages of this before the decision was made, which is when someone would say, hey, John Harbaugh would be employed tomorrow, my response was, yeah, I think you're right, and I think he might even win tomorrow. And I still don't think that means that this was the wrong, or would be the wrong decision. I think both things, it's one of those amazing both things are true situations where, yeah, I think John Harbaugh is a good football coach. I just think it ended here.
Yeah.
Here, it was over.
Yeah, and, I'm aware that Steve Bisciotti had a week to think about how he was going to message that dismissal decision. But the way he put it makes a ton of sense, because you can get caught in the coaching death spiral, right? I mean, and a lot of coaches, that happens. There's people tell them, okay, well, you can stay, but you got to fire coordinators. Steve had the foresight to look ahead of that, and maybe he was fighting with John over Monken. I don't really know, but he had the foresight to look ahead and be like, wait, if we're talking about, do you run it back with different coordinators? You have to reshuffle. Like, a year from now, I'm going to have to fire you anyway.
I might, yep.
And I think sort of being caught in that gravity well is a stronger force than, is this person a good coach or not? I think that just happens over time. I mean, and I think it's also telling and reinforcing that, the other longest tenured head coach resigned the same week as John Harbaugh, right? I mean, within a week, Mike Tomlin is out, and the message had sort of gotten stale, or the plateau had been reached, and you just got to give it a crack somewhere else, and that just happens. We don't see it a lot because most coaches don't coach in one place for 20 years. John Harbaugh is the longest tenured head coach of any Baltimore pro sports team ever. That it just has never happened in Baltimore where someone was coached for 18 years, and the entropy comes for us all.
I agree with everything that you just said, and I feel like it was, again, in the praise that I would offer for Steve Bisciotti's press conference, and we'll get into that in a minute. I would say that the human element of what he was dealing with, I think, was very real. And the people that say, well, you should have done this before, I think what he was trying to explain was, no, I felt like we were moving towards something. And it was the thing that I would always say, like, for all of the questions I had about the blown leads and for all of the questions that I had about game situations, in the end, winning to me is the thing that matters. Ultimately, if you're winning, if it feels like you're knocking on the door, what you just said about sort of the crapshoot of the playoffs is real to me. Put yourself in that position. But this was the year where it felt like there was real regression. And at that point, I think that he felt it, and I think that a lot of us felt it. And I think reasonable thinkers, again, the people that always just want to fire the coach are going to exist. There will eternally be a group of people who, whenever anything goes wrong, when you lose a game, the answer is fire the coach, right? Like, and I just can't deal with that level of conversation because it's brainless. But from a practical standpoint, I think everyone felt it, and I appreciated the human part of what he was attempting to explain, where there's no way to define this. We can't say this is the one reason, because, as he said, would the kick have changed things? I don't know, maybe for a week. But maybe they go beat the Texans a week later, and then the entire conversation changes.
Can I ask you something? What was your reaction when he said that? Because that was one of the most jarring things I thought he said, which felt cavalier, right? I mean, the whole thing was sort of like, John is great. The time had come, but John is so great. He's my best friend. I'm tired of all the media coming after my friend, even though I just fired him over the phone.
Right.
But the whole Tyler loop for a week, I mean, obviously part of it was we can't put John's job on Tyler. I get that. They probably discussed that beforehand. But just the way he said it was stunning to me, and I'm wondering how you felt. It was
kind of curt, right? Like, it was a short, I think that he would have been well suited to say, not forever, right? Like, something that would have explained it a little bit better, which I think the truth is, and based a little bit on whatever element of reporting you want to say I do, and I think that there was a world in which they make a deep playoff run, and despite the fact that in late December, Steve Bisciotti believed he was going to have to fire John Harbaugh, he would have reserved the right to change his mind about that if the trajectory changed. If somehow this team was in the AFC Championship game, it came down to the final play of the AFC Championship game, and they were that close to going to a Super Bowl, I do think that he might have a different opinion about whether or not he needed to fire John Harbaugh. I think he, at that deep in the press conference, was kind of sick of talking about it and just decided to give a really short answer to that question. And I think, to your point, it did come off a little jarring the way that he said it, but I also think I understand what he was attempting to say, which is this didn't all come down to the game in Pittsburgh. Like, that this, if they had won the game in Pittsburgh, if they had made the kick and turned around and lost to the Texans, we're probably in the exact same spot.
Yeah. But I guess I'm not saying that it was a little unceremonious how he said it, but that kind of made me buy Steve's story. That's like, I'd been thinking about it. And any press conference is a little bit of theater, which I think we're going to discuss in a little bit.
Yep.
But it did, just the way that it was sort of offhand for a week. It kind of made me buy, like, okay, he was getting close to making up his mind. And, I know I'm not one of his top 3
I
reporters.
just missed the cut, which is wild, right? Yeah.
But I do wonder if I'm top 4, because in January I wrote John Harbaugh has done enough to earn an extension, and in March Steve
they
Bisciotti
gave an
gives
extension, yeah,
and then I wrote, Steve Bisciotti has to answer the fans, and he answers to the fans. I don't know. Maybe
you're
I'm
thinking
4.
that maybe he's taking
some. I think
some
a case
getting
exists
some ideas.
that I'm number 4 behind Mike Preston.
Wow, that's
so I don't know. It's not
we'll
the normal thing.
We're gonna do a power
Yeah,
rankings.
full
We're gonna do a full reporter power
yeah.
rankings.
Well, it's not the normal thing I would write. I dabble a little bit in conspiracy theories when I'm talking.
Right.
So your viewers get the special chance to see what
you're walking through. I appreciate that. I think it'd be tough right now to compete with Jerry, though. I think that might be really difficult.
Jerry, I gotta
Jerry.
admit, Jerry asked the question of the press conference about Justin Tucker, which Steve had even less interest in talking about than Tyler Luke.
I want to cover this as simply as I can, because I've talked about it already. That was the first one was a really important question, and I give Jerry an awful lot of credit. It's one of the things that I have this wonderful frenemy relationship with Jerry that I think people know dates back for years, when Jerry would listen to our show every morning and would try to fight with us over text as he was listening to Drew and I every morning. And we would then call him out on the radio. And we had this great frenemy thing that we did for years. I like Jerry in that weird I know all of the weird idiosyncrasies about Jerry. And it's sort of like that uncle that you have in your life that you're just like, you know what, man, I love him. I don't know how to explain it. I love him. But one of the things I do love about him is there was a time where Jerry was very willing to always ask the important question that needed to be asked that a lot of other people were sort of tiptoeing around. Jerry did that for years around here. Now, sometimes it feels a little self-serving. Sometimes it feels like Jerry's just trying to get a response out of someone that will get him attention, and I understand that. That was weird because somebody said that wasn't the question that needed to be asked, that this was ostensibly about the fact that you just fired a coach. But the point is that John Harbaugh, not John Harbaugh, Steve Bisciotti has completely avoided this topic whatsoever, kind of shamefully. Like, if I'm going to call him out about something, because I do think for the most part I thought it was a very good press conference, but there's this was a Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame caliber football player that was unceremoniously dismissed from your team, and there's an awful lot of questions about what you knew and when you knew it and what the organization might have done. It is shameful that he has abdicated any responsibility and has completely dismissed himself. And I thought it was a very disappointing answer to the question. Now, Jerry ended up getting flustered and asked a really dumb question about, would Justin Tucker have made the – that's a dumb, irrelevant question. And you could tell he was flustered by the fact that Steve had no interest in responding to it. But to anybody that thought that was out of line for Jerry to ask about, it's the exact opposite of that. It was a very good question that has needed to be answered. It's disappointing that the organization continues to play we just hope this is going to go away instead of being inclined to actually answer anything about it.
The whole that's like out of our hands, as if the Ravens don't have the ability to independently investigate things like this it's not sufficient. I mean, the Ravens have an enormous security staff. They have, a good relationship with the Baltimore County Police Department. There's a lot of ways that they could be able to independently, if they wanted to, investigate.
Oh, I'll also add they aggressively monitor social media.
They
aggressively.
Do. Anyway, but point being, the other parallel I want to draw is when Ray Rice happened, Steve was out in front of it. And to be honest, kind of made an ass out of himself at the time, right? I mean, sort of said, we believe in our relationship with Ray, and then it came out that the Ravens had never watched the video of Ray and Janelle. And not saying one thing or the other about Ray and Janelle, I think that's kind of past the point here, but the point being, the last time this happened with a star player, Steve was kind of at the front of it, had egg on his face, and I think it's telling that since Justin Tucker happened, it's taken a year for Steve to say anything about it. When he finally does say something about it, it's nothing. It's, well, this is an Eric and John issue. I mean, Probably not.
Nope.
He's involved.
It's very difficult.
So I just think it was certainly worth asking, even if, you feel like, what can Steve say? What response is Steve going to give you in that moment? This is the forum in which the Ravens have contrived that the media gets any interaction with Steve. This is our only chance to talk to Steve. And I appreciated that he had to answer a few questions about Justin Tucker. The merits of questions, whatever, but I appreciated that he was asked some questions about Justin Tucker.
Kyle Goon of the Baltimore Banner is in studio with us on a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. Today's show brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel, where they are giving away a trip to the Winter Games, which is wild, man. I can't believe they're doing that. LiveCH.com is the website for you to find out more. And, of course, Sports and Social is the best place to watch all of the action on a playoff weekend. Let's dovetail. I'll come back to the Ravens and the coaching search in a second because we're getting into the press conference. Because you kind of stirred things up a little bit this week, and I acknowledge that I was really I thought that Pat McAfee sent out a really bad tweet this week. I thought it, and I have a really weird. I have no animosity towards Pat McAfee whatsoever, but it feels like the only time I ever talk about him is I think he's making an ass out of himself. I don't watch his show. It's not for me. It's for younger people, and
this is why you want to get off by 12 because Pat's show starts at 12. And
that's the reason.
That's why.
That's fine. And I have no I've said a million times. Some of the things that he feels are things that I share. Like I do think that a lot of people take themselves too seriously. I do like doing shtick and bits, and a lot of people sent me that he made a song about Steve Bisciotti yesterday. I think that's fun. I think that's good content. I'm not as I want to look at it with a more critical eye than he does, but I think it's fun to do fun content. And I get it. A lot of Steve Bisciotti's answers on Tuesday were really good, and so I know why he enjoyed hearing from Steve Bisciotti, and he made a neat song about it, or his staff made a neat song about it. That's neat. I like that content. That said, this Rorschach test that occurred this week, in the aftermath of the interaction that Liam Cohen, the Jaguars head coach, had with Lynn Jones, this reporter from the Jacksonville Free Press, following the game, has been really wild for me. And there's a few big picture things that to me have come from it. One is realizing just how successful that certain bad actors have been in convincing the public at large that the media is a boogeyman. The concept of the word media is a boogeyman. And so we're all detestable. Everyone that works in this industry is detestable. The bad actors who have wanted that have gotten their way. They've won. There's no doubt in my mind. They've won. There is absolutely an animosity that exists just for the concept of media. They've succeeded significantly. It's kind of wild to me who some of the people are that have been manipulated by that, and who otherwise, if they heard it from, say, the President of the United States, would say, well, this guy's a clown, but yet they also repeat it. They still have those same feelings. It's very wild to me how that's played out. But Pat McAfee sends this lengthy tweet the other day attacking sports media in relation to this. And, Griffin's got it up on the screen. I'm not going to read the entire thing because I don't have the bandwidth for it, I don't. But it blows my mind that this became what it became. Because I think all it really required was, hey, this probably isn't the place for this. This is probably inappropriate, but it's not the end of the. Nobody thinks that this woman should be in jail. No one thinks that this woman should be immediately fired from her job or banned for life. It just probably wasn't the place for this to occur, and we probably need to be able to say that just to remind everybody that, hey, this shouldn't be what this devolves into. That this is nothing but, hey, good on you. That there should still be the ability to ask questions.
Yes. First of all, I want to, just go at Pat McAfee because he committed the cardinal sin in this tweet which is he committed the cardinal sin of a weak ass take. He said, obviously not all, but a large portion of these journalists are curmudgeons who don't get sports.
Right. So who?
And I was like, okay, so you're pretending you're saying it with your chest,
right.
but you're leaving the wiggle room. But just on the Lynn Jones of it all, and Lynn Jones, for everyone listening, is a woman who made these comments to Liam Cohen at the press conference that kicked this off. I sort of have a internal policy. I mean, I think we all have sort of, when we go into the press conference, we have questions that we would ask, we have behavior that we would, but I have sort of a personal policy. The press conference is an area where we do work, but it also, I believe deeply that anyone who is credentialed should be able to use that time how they want. And it sort of gets back to the Jerry Coleman of it all that we were talking about. That is Jerry gonna, do what I would do? Is Jerry gonna do what Kyle Goon does all the time? No.
Mm-hmm.
But does he get some good responses out of what he does? Yeah. And this is the only forum we have to interact with a lot of these figures. Especially like Steve, especially like Lamar Jackson, who
very
can be
private,
very
incredibly
tough to
private,
pin down.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he has locker room time, it's a little hard to pin him down. So I believe we should be able to ask whatever we want. And if Lynn Jones wants to use her time, and apparently she has worked for her publication in Jacksonville for 40 years, I'm not going to wag my finger. It wouldn't be what I would do,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to lecture that person for how they use their time. Now, I think where sports journalists kind of tripped over themselves is there has been this trend where credentialing has gotten, wider. And, that encompasses fan blogs, that encompasses influencers, that encompasses, dime store radio hosts.
Podcasters. Maybe not even dime store in some cases.
But, I think a lot of sort of, let's call them traditional media. Even I'm not exactly traditional media, right? I work for a website. Traditional media folks feel under attack by the old way of doing things. And or the old way of doing things is not what is happening now, where there's this impression that teams credential more of sort of, let's call them outsiders or non-traditional.
Or even specifically looking for friendly voices.
Right.
That they are particularly trying to push off more critical voices in favor of more friendly voices.
I mean, just look at how the Pentagon is covered now, by the way, if you want sort of a beat on that. But to the point is, I don't always think that media has been a friendly place for diversity of thought, for diversity literally of the journalists employed. And I think that adjustment process is hard. But I think also there's this feeling that, if you kind of clutter up, a 20-minute press conference with more sort of work-oriented commentary or questions, then you get less done. And I think, there's just going to have to be a certain amount of acceptance that, and what I've tried to do over my career is accept that people who are credentialed should be able to use that time how they want and then be judged on the merits of their questions or their conduct or how much they get done in those press conference environments. And so, for me, for Jerry Coleman, for Lynn Jones, we're judged by what we say in that room and how we use that time. And I think it's sort of, eventually all the pieces kind of fall where they should be if you use that time the right way. So I'm going to have my own philosophy. Jerry's going to have his own philosophy. Lynn Jones is going to have her own philosophy. And everyone can kind of judge us on the merits of how we use that time and the questions we choose to ask.
I appreciate everything you just said, and I probably stand to back it up. In fact, when I discussed it on Monday, I said I have far less issue with her, consoling of Liam Cohen than I did with her yelling out Duval, right? Like, that part of it to me was the only, like, I didn't like any of it, but that to me, I think that's fine for her to use it. I just didn't like that part because that felt completely separated from any working concept. All that being I think a lot of people believe what you just said. Everybody uses their time the way they want to use their time. I think the fact that people take advantage of that has been detrimental to the greater good of what is the point of doing this. And I think there has been more self-serving and more self-aggrandizing, and this isn't really the number of times that someone says, is there a question in there? I think I actually appreciate that when someone brings that up, because I do think that a lot of times someone just starts talking and they're just talking for the sake of hearing their own voice, and it's part of why, frankly, I stopped covering on a day-to-day basis, because I'm going to share my opinions. That's what I'm paid to do.
Because you love the sound of your own voice, to be clear.
I don't want to hear anybody else's. I hate that you're here. It's less me. It's killing me that there's less me today. It's part of it is someone else can ask that question. It's okay by me if someone else asks the question. I don't need to be the one asking the question, and my job isn't specifically paying me to be the one to do it. Now, that's more complicated, and I can talk about that at some other point. It's not germane necessarily to the topic. But I do think that there is an issue with that goes beyond media. We all believe we're the main character. All of us believe we're the main character. And I think that has permeated press conferences. It's permeated media concepts where I need to put over what I want to put over here. Instead of having a larger conversation or learning, which is why I do love this part of it. I want to learn more. I might be wrong about what my preconceived notions are or my concept is, and I want you to tell me. It infuriates me sometimes when I'm asking questions that I know someone is immediately going to be defensive, and I have to say, I'm not telling, I'm asking. I'm asking if this makes sense. If what I've thought through and what I've come to, does that make sense? I love that part of it, but it feels like that has become a bit of a lost art. And I do think it is hurt, and it is added to this, well, all of you are detestable thing, because I think there is more and more grandstanding that has happened and more attempts to put yourself over instead of using that opportunity to genuinely get an answer to a question.
Yeah, and those are some really interesting points that I think have to do with a lot of how we judge the value of voice right now, which is I'm pushing myself to the front of the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of would like to think that the audience can be more discerning. But you know, my biggest issue though is still with this idea that journalists don't get it, that journalists don't have passion for sports, that these press conferences are pointless. First of all, I think the Steve Bisciotti thing sort of proved the value of press conferences. You know, would I like to talk with Steve Bisciotti in a darkened room in the back somewhere and him be like, all right, here's how it all went down?
I don't know if it specifically needs to be darkened. I don't know why it has to be darkened.
No, it's dark.
That's
dark
weird. I don't know why it has
dim.
to be that. That's
no direct
concerning.
lighting.
Yeah.
Definitely no fluorescent in there.
What happens in that room? I don't think I want to be in that room.
Well, he's a rich guy. So.
I understand, and he's Italian. Keep that in mind.
I'm
just
not
gotta.
there.
We just got to throw that out. I'd say we're doing dark rooms, man. I don't know.
But
I want to be in a well lit room myself.
Here's my point. I'm gonna get out of whatever we just waded into.
I apologize.
No, but Pat McAfee, the whole song thing that he did on Steve Bisciotti, sorry, that doesn't exist without that press conference happening.
Right.
It doesn't exist without people who went to journalism school or people who have done this job for 2 or 3 decades. I mean, you know, how long has Jeff Strebeck and Jamison Hensley covered this team? Decades. I mean, it doesn't exist without those people asking those questions that Pat McAfee seems to despise so much. Hey, Pat, thank us for the content. How about that? I really wish people
look into the
like
camera
Pat
when you say
McAfee,
that, Kyle.
who have become millionaires over talking about the things that journalists help gather, that say thank you for the content, Pat. Just say thank you for the content. I wish you would just do that. And secondly, you know, gosh, sorry, Pat McAfee just riled me up with that tweet the other day. But I just think when you're talking about one thing I noticed as a columnist, you never say the right thing to 100% of the people, right?
Of course not.
And I'm sure you noticed that as podcast radio host. When the team is doing well, you get a lot of people sort of in the Pat McAfee vein of criticism being like, God, this guy's such a curmudgeon.
Mm-hmm.
This guy hates this team.
Mm-hmm.
This guy doesn't like the Ravens, wants them to succeed. Hey, when the Ravens lose 5 straight games, Kyle Goon, get in there and ask John Harbaugh a hard question.
Ask the tough questions.
Kyle
right?
Goon, get in there and ask why is Lamar Jackson stink? Like, and it really wavers with the fans and how they're reacting to how the team is doing. And I think it's interesting in a year like this one how the media gains more power and more sort of onus because people want to know what the heck went wrong.
What happened, right?
And guess what? That's what the press conference is for. That's the press conferences, at least in the current state, in the current structure, the Ravens have decided that this little period is how people figure out why things happen with the team. And what you should want for your investment, if you buy tickets, if you buy cable packages, if you buy jerseys, if you spend all this time in the heat, in the cold, if you invest all that as a fan and you make Steve Bisciotti one of the richest men in the world, don't you want to know why he fired his coach? And that's what I want people to want. That's what I want consumers to want. They want to. You want to know? Okay, we're going to try and find that out for you. And that's really, I don't want to get on a high horse, but there's a value to that.
I have a complicated relationship with this topic because I do think that also it becomes a bit of a theater sometimes for the performer that's involved, which also sort of went into why I kind of stopped prioritizing being there every day, is because I felt like I was being used to tell a story that may or may not actually be true. And that's a complicated conversation, right? Like, and I like on Tuesday, I really genuinely felt, and maybe I'm buying it hook, line, and sinker, but I felt like there was an awful lot of truth that was being shared in that press conference. Too. And so I might feel differently about that than I have felt about other things, right? Like there have been times where it's just felt like you're asking me to be a part of a game. I'm not going to talk to you about this. And so what I do share, I don't know how truthful it is, because there's certainly things you're not going to do. You're not going to openly criticize so-and-so because they're employed by you, so we're ever going to get the actual truth. There are things like that do become complicated to me in sports coverage. And I also say, like, it's difficult for me, like, when somebody says, do we need to hold people accountable? I don't know how much we need to hold sports teams accountable. This is a free market thing to me. To what you say, people get to choose whether or not they want to spend their money on the sports team. You get to choose that. I know the argument is, well, we gave $600 million of public money to them that we didn't choose necessarily. Obviously, the people that we elected to represent us did. And so in that way, we did kind of in a roundabout way choose that. And I have no problem with it, but what happened on third down really has nothing to do with the $600 million in public money that was spent on the team. We're not really holding them accountable. In the post-game press conference, we're not asking, hey, are you going to use the stadium for high school football championship games because we're giving public money to the team? I have a complicated feeling about it, but inherently I do still want them to exist. I still want them to exist.
No, I mean, me too. And I think you and I and Glenn, even though I think, most of your obviously not all people in your profession are vultures that
Are you sure? Because
obviously not.
I'm not certain of that.
No, but listen, I think you and I share this vision that sports teams are this like great force in a community, right? I grew up in Ellicott City, but for most of my life I've identified with the Orioles, with the Ravens, and like I make no secret that I did not grow up in the city, and I know that has many ramifications. But
I'm sorry,
but
we're gonna need to end this here.
No, but I identified with Baltimore. That's the point. Like me, a suburban kid, identified with Baltimore to the point where I have now made my life back in that city. I now live in Baltimore City, and I advocate for Baltimore in this way. And that's in large part because of my identity through sports, through being an Orioles fan when I was a kid, being a Ravens fan when I was a kid. But I also think it would be helpful for people to imagine these sports teams, which they are, as multi-billion-dollar businesses. and the fans are shareholders, and the reporters are tasked with figuring out what you're getting for your share. And that's kind of how I try to think of it. So, the other sort of flare-up I had with the team a few years ago was over Zay Flowers and how I wrote about Zay Flowers when he was under investigation. And that investigation resulted in no charges.
Yep.
And you and I talked about this, about how it was about, to me, it was about the team policy about zero tolerance, which
what does it mean? Right.
We found out a year later it did not exist.
Correct.
It existed only in imagination. But to me, like, there were a lot of people at the time who were like, we just went to the AFC Championship. Zay
Right.
Flowers are our most promising rookie, like this and that. But like, I feel a responsibility to find out the truth behind how these multi-billion-dollar businesses are being operated. And I think people deserve it. And frankly, a lot of people agree with me. So, these are the tools we have. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've certainly have takes I wish I could take back. I've certainly have directions I went that I wish I
I've
could
gotten
take
everything.
back.
I've gotten everything right over the years. I've
you've
never
nailed
gotten
it.
100%.
Someday I'll be like you.
I'm better than Eric DeCosta, in fact. He's only 820. I'm 100.
800 batter. That was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
But it's just these are the tools we have, and these are we have media, so people can everyday people can find out things they want to know about this multi-billion-dollar business that they have bought shares into over. I mean, maybe even more invested in your team than you are in a stock that you have. I mean, everybody has a retirement portfolio. I don't know what's in my retirement
You're just hoping that it's
portfolio.
working out.
But like,
Right.
if you have
Yeah.
if you have a Justin Tucker jersey and you've had it for 8 years or 9 years, you probably feel some type of way about what happened in the last year to this franchise. So I just think that's the way I try to look at it, even though I have these emotional connections. And guess what? When Lamar Jackson makes an amazing play like he did in Pittsburgh, I'm like this.
Yeah.
Like, I make a face. I sort of have an appreciation for the incredible aesthetics of sports. But that's kind of where it is right now for me, because my job is to try and take a hard look at this business, how it operates, talk about the good and the bad.
Kyle Goon is in studio with us today. We're going to grab a break. When we come back in, we'll take a quick detour. Pactrick Stevens joins us every Wednesday. We'll talk some hoops with him. And then I want to run through a couple minutes with Kyle about there is a coaching search going on and what might happen, what might come from it. So that's still to come as we continue along here on a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
The weather's getting cooler, so when you and your family are picking out a place to dine, be it lunch or dinner, let's make it nice and easy. Now, with 2 great locations, the Costas Inn remains your #1 destination. Whether you want to get steamed crabs and the full Costas menu out at the original location at 4100 North Point Boulevard, or sample the complete menu minus the steamed crabs at the new location above the grandstand at the Timonium Racetrack, Costas is your place to go. Check out the website CostasInn.com for a look at the menu, and if you want to plan that crab feast, call 410-477-1975. The Costas Inn.
Get in the game with Volo Sports. With over 15 sports to choose from, join a league or grab a Volo membership for discounted play, free daily pickups, fitness classes, and exclusive events. But the best part? A portion of every league fee helps the Volo Kids Foundation provide free sports to over 5,000 kids across Baltimore City each year. Don't miss out. Early pricing for the winter season ends December 12th. Final registration deadline is January 15th. Sign up now at volosports.com/Baltimore.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The latest edition of PressBox is available now. and it's our annual Best Of issue, celebrating the top people, performances, and moments of 2025 in local sports. On the cover, we recognize 4 of the most significant athletes of the year: Orioles pitcher Trevor Rogers, Navy quarterback Blake Horvath, Maryland basketball star Derek Queen, and our 2025 Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Ravens safety Kyle Hamilton. Press box is available for free at over 250 locations throughout the region, including your Baltimore area High's dairy stores. Plus, you can read the entire issue online at PressBoxOnline.com, where you can also find great betting advice and the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps.
This January, go for the gold at Live Casino and enter to win the ultimate winter experience. Earn the entire month of January, and on Saturday, January 24th, you could be one of 25 lucky winners to take their place on the podium and win a share of $50,000 in prizes, including a trip to the 2026 Winter Games in Milano Cortina. Let the games begin at Live Casino. At Arundel Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
Back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Thursday edition of GCR. Kyle Goon of the Baltimore Banner is in studio with us. What are you working on right now, Kyle Goon?
Couple things, but I was really interested in what Steve said about Lamar Jackson, weren't you?
And his involvement? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I that felt a bit like a challenge. Not even a bit like it felt like a challenge.
Okay.
It felt like, hey, and Steve acknowledging, which I thought was
take
really
some ownership
interesting.
here, right?
Yeah, I thought Steve acknowledging I want him to be my quarterback. I want to pay him a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of different tone than a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then saying, hey, if he wants to get on a plane, you can have my jet.
Mm-hmm. Come on, let's do it. Right.
That's like the OTA's challenge times 10, I think, where it's like, hey, if you want to be involved in this next coach, come on.
Yep. We're going to make it very easy for you.
So I was very interested in that. So I mean, we'll see, but I think the next thing I write is going to be about that.
Very good. We will look forward to that. Of course, the Baltimore Banner. Every Thursday, and I know we've had a couple of weird weeks here with coaching change and some holidays involved, so it's been a little bit, but we're going to get back into the swing of things as every week. Our friend Pactrick Stevens, who, of course, you know from Blue Ribbon, the Washington Post, and on social at Discourse, D1S Course, is back with us here on GCR. Patrick, Kyle Goon is in studio with me today. It's always good to catch up. Thanks for hopping back on with us, pal.
Thanks for having me.
I will start the conversation this way because I joked with you about it last week when I saw you at the Towson game. How non-zero is the chance that Maryland is going to finish the season with 0 Big Ten wins?
Well, ask me in a week, and I suspect that they'll either have one or the chances will have increased tremendously. It is definitely non-zero. The games that kind of stand out as winnable for this team are Sunday against Penn State,
and
they've got a home and home against Rutgers. And I don't know how many more games this team realistically has a decent shot at. Now, there's always a chance a team comes in and can't make any shots. And that's kind of what they almost have to hope for at this point, because it's a bleak situation watching that team play. I mean, it's certainly, you can go ahead and book the Terps for that Tuesday at the Big Ten tournament, and probably not much longer than that.
Patrick, if I phrase it this way, I think there would be a lot of people that would say, well, obviously they've been hurt by Pharrell Payne and injury, and hey, it's the first year for a head coach and all of those things. But this is also an era of college basketball where you are capable of making a roster on the fly. How much worse is this than what should have reasonably been expected, which, given our conversations, it wasn't good to begin with what the expectations were?
Yeah, I think that it would have been unrealistic for anybody to absolutely say a coach coming in that basically has to begin building a roster on April 1st, April 2nd, that should be an NCAA tournament team. Not saying it can't be, but saying that is an expectation would be unfair. To have the expectation that you might be 11th, 12th in the Big Ten and capable of knocking somebody with a pulse off, yeah, that's reasonable. So there is no doubt in my mind that this is the worst Maryland team to come down the pike since the Bob Wade era. And in fact, Buzz Williams is the first full-time head coach at Maryland to have at any point in his tenure a sub-500 career record at Maryland since Bob Wade was fired in 1989. I mean, these are the comparisons that are justified at the moment, just given how utterly inept Maryland is on offense, and just there's just not a lot to work with there. And I'm right now, the thing I'm most curious about with Maryland is how many guys that are on this roster this year are on the roster next year and theoretically part of a team that's capable of taking some sort of jump, because it's not going to be hard to take some kind of a jump next year, but to take a jump towards being a 18 to 20 win team. What I will say is this, is that in addition, every coach, even in this era, is bound to have a rough patch here and there. And with rosters being what they are, coming and going, the chances of that increase considerably. But people can only have so much patience for watching that kind of product. I mean, the product just is simply not good. It's not even like the team from 2 years ago that couldn't shoot but could defend like crazy. I mean, this is a average at best, and frankly worse than that, defensive team. And so if Maryland doesn't have a good season next year, we've already seen what happens on the football side when a team in this market and at that school isn't consistently good. And they face a considerable danger, given that, right now, this is 3 out of 5 seasons that they've basically punted. The year where Mark Turgeon stepped down in the Danny Manning season, Willard's second season, and now this. And yeah, there was a Sweet 16 in there, and there was a second round appearance a few years before that. But this is you get 5, 6, 7 years of more bad than good, and what you are as a program begins to look a little different than what everybody imagined it was.
Patrick, this is Kyle here. First of all, go Terps, go Diamondback alums. But I hope the listeners appreciate, and what I appreciate most about you is you can say this team sucks in a very historically contextual way, bringing up Bob Wade. So Patrick is a human encyclopedia when it comes to local basketball knowledge, and I hope the listeners appreciate that. But, obviously, I mean, we're already kind of talking about next year. What do you kind of see and what are you hearing from the team or anyone else about the incoming class, including, obviously, Baba from Blake?
Yeah, I think clearly it's a class that Maryland fans should be much more interested in what those guys are doing than what's actually happening on the floor for the next 15 games or whatever. But it's obvious that that's going to be a group in aggregate that they're going to build around. But for a year, right? Like, I mean, at this point, nobody's building around anything for more than a year. But I also think that you can't, in this era, now maybe a little less than the last few years when you had all these 5th year and 6th year guys with the COVID years and whatnot, but you still want to have some experience, which is why I think the really important thing for Maryland is going to be what 3 or 4 guys, let's say, do they go target in the portal this year? What veteran guys can they get to transfer in? And who ultimately does kind of stick around and benefit from what this whole experience has been like? Is there a situation where Pharrell Payne, is back as a red shirt? Certainly a guy like him, 6'9", 250. I mean, he's probably going to do better if he has another college year financially than he is if he goes and plays pro someplace next year. So, what we saw from him early on was a guy that at least gave them the ability to offensive rebound and get to the foul line. And those are things that they have not done as well without him. So, what other pieces are floating around out there? Shooters, a point guard, all sorts of things, right? I mean, it's not like there's a short shopping list for what Maryland needs. So it's not just simply those freshmen who are going to be useful, but there's going to need to be some older guys too that come in and are able to play effectively. And, I hate to say it, I'm not trying to make an excuse for how bad this team is, but starting, you start shopping for those guys on April 2nd, it's a lot different than getting feelers out and having a plan a couple weeks earlier. No matter what the calendar formally says, like, stuff is going on in the background. And, I think that will help. How much it helps remains to be seen.
He is Pactrick Stevens. He's with us here on GCR. Patrick, I referenced bumping into you at the Towson game. Obviously, they have a massive one tonight with Charleston in town. They get off to an 0-4 start. They do get off the schneid, but just how alarming is this for Towson? Is it recalibrate expectations? Is it maybe it was just a 2-week bump in the road that can be forgotten? Like, how fatal maybe are some of their flaws despite having what we know to be a couple of really good players?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting after last Thursday's game that Pat Scarry was very, tried to be as calm as could be, wasn't going to sit there and hit the panic button, didn't want to sit there and, say, well, Tejada and Williamson, need to be better and whatnot. I mean, obviously there's some sense of that. I mean, Dylan Williamson was 2-19 from the floor in that game. And when your second best player does that, it doesn't matter what level you're on. It's probably not going to end very well. I look at that stretch and that the 48 points at home against Monmouth, I thought was the much bigger alarm than anything else. But the bigger picture for these guys is, one, they're only shooting 27, 28% from three.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't, that's the long-standing Towson issue, right? Can you make shots? And this team simply has not been able to do that on a regular basis. And the other thing is what else do you have, to complement Tejada and Williamson, who are two guys that have to have the ball in their hands a lot. And that's kind of a thing that comes and goes a little bit for these guys. And you look back at that game against Hofstra, and Jaquan Womack had a decent game, and Tyler Coleman had a decent game. But in some ways they had to, because the other two guys just simply didn't play well. And to their credit, they both played pretty well up in Boston as well. Now, I think one thing that's important for these guys is, can they get Jack Doumbia back from his injury and get him kind of reintegrated? But at the same time, he's another guy that needs to have the ball in his hands. So there's only going to be one ball. So, the fact that they're halfway through the season and haven't quite figured out that equation entirely has to be disconcerting. I think for them, the next really couple weeks with this Charleston game, they have Wilmington that comes in 2 weeks from today. And those are the games that are going to tell us a lot more about them than pretty much, I think, anything throughout most of February. And if I look at Towson right now, I certainly don't think they're the best team in the CAA. Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, the goal for them has to be get in the top four and take your chances from there. Because I think already, with Hofstra off to the start that it's off to, and Wilmington being good, Charleston being good, like your chances of being able to win the regular season are basically shot. I think 3-4 would be the top end for this team at this point in the regular season.
And then what else stands out at the local level? I mean, I guess a good start in conference play for UMBC jumps out.
Yeah, UMBC basically had two of the worst teams in the America East, and they were able to fend off Maine and then edge New Hampshire on a couple free throws late. I think it was DJ Armstrong that had those. So they've won 3 in a row, and they're 2-0 in the league. So that's a nice start for them. I was over at Loyola last night, and even though Loyola has now, fallen to 1-4 in the Patriot League, I kind of walked away from that game thinking that all those young guys that we were talking about earlier in the season, whether it was Sebastian Emanalo, who had a career-high 19, or Carter Berg-McLean, who played some really good, tough minutes in the first half, and Emmett Adair, they're coming along. And, it would not shock me to see Loyola end up like 3-6 the first half of Patriot League play, and then be above 500 on the back end of the regular season in conference play. So I don't know that that's a team that is going to finish in the top half of the Patriot League, but it might be a little bit like last year, where by the time the conference tournament rolled around, they were a handful. And I would also point out, I think Braden Speed has taken a huge step for them. He had 20 last night, but also double-digit rebounds, which, for a 6'3", 190 guard, pretty good. And so they hung around with Colgate. Felt, that game was tight down to the last minute or so. And so I feel like, looking at what they've done aside from that performance against Lafayette, I mean, they've actually been decent so far in conference play, even though they are 1-4.
And on the national level, I actually watched a bit of Kansas, who really put it to Iowa State this week. That was very impressive, and maybe reports their demise have been exaggerated. But I know we talked about Nebraska a couple weeks ago. I'm starting to wonder if there really is like an Indiana football comparison to be made. Not that I think they're going to be, national champions or anything like that, but like how this story that's just kind of been cute. Like, are we gonna have to start talking at some point? Like, no, they really are like a legitimate Final Four type of contender.
Well, the interesting thing about Nebraska is when you start looking through like the metrics that are on the team sheets, right? And it's interesting that they're result-based metrics, which is basically just taking into account wins and losses. Not surprising, very good. Like all in the top 5, undefeated team, not surprising. But when you get into the predictive metrics, which take into account margin of victory and efficiencies and that sort of thing, KenPom has them 15th. The Torvik ranking has them 16th, and ESPN's metric has them at 20th. And so, the net has them at 10. I'm interested to see as they delve a little deeper, how many of these tight games they can keep winning. I mean, you look at their best wins. They won at Ohio State by 3. They won at Illinois by 3. They beat Michigan State by 2. They won at Indiana by 6. Now, you don't expect them to go on the road and beat a top-tier team by a whole lot. But at the same time, I think there is something interesting there about how good they're ultimately going to be. Now, certainly no complaints about what they've done so far, but they do kind of remind me, a little bit of that Wisconsin team from a few years ago that just kept finding ways to win ridiculously close games night after night after night. And maybe that leads to a special season, and maybe there's maybe a few bumps in the road waiting for them. But they're certainly a team that has drawn and deserves more notice than they got coming into the year.
All right, now Kyle Goon, if you are impressed by Pactrick Stevens' encyclopedic basketball knowledge, you're really going to be impressed by Pactrick Stevens' encyclopedic baseball knowledge, because this man is a cheat code when it comes to the immaculate grid. He can think of players that you don't know were ever players. I mean, it's unbelievable what he can do.
I got to admit, it's not hard to beat me on that.
We play a game. It's called Can Pactrick Stevens Name the MLB Teams that this particular player played for or managed? And I've got 2 that I think are very easy and then 1 ball buster for this week. So, Patrick, we'll start with the manager. Incredibly easy, the 3 teams for Tony La Russa.
Tony La Russa, the White Sox ×2, Oakland and St. Louis.
Does the second one really count, though, from the White Sox? I'm not sure he was actually present for any of that. I'm not certain that he was ever actually awake. Now the ball buster, someone who is still...
Hey, by the way, you know who was his interim manager at the end of that White Sox tenure, right?
Who was his interim manager? No, of course I don't know that, but you do, of course.
The new Orioles coach, Miguel Cairo.
Oh, I did not. Of course you know that. Of course you know that. Why would you know that? But of course you know that.
Well, he was the caretaker for the Nats the last half.
Oh, got it. So he's like a professional interim manager now.
The Terry Robisky.
100%. That's exactly the name I was thinking of. That's always a good
label to get.
Yeah.
It's like I'm always the interim, never the bride. That's a good label to get.
5 teams for an active pitcher. Only 1 All-Star appearance. Someone who I thought was going to be a star. Taijuan Walker.
Taijuan Walker. All right. Well, he was definitely in Seattle.
Of course.
And he's a Philly for sure.
Of course.
And the Mets.
Yes.
Taijuan Walker. Am I remembering him in Arizona?
You are remembering him in Arizona. And now this one, if you don't get, I will completely understand, because it was 6 appearances during the COVID year.
6 appearances in the COVID year. Okay.
Yeah.
How about we throw the Cubs in there?
It's a good one. It was Toronto. For 6 appearances in the COVID year.
All right.
And we'll wrap it up with 3 teams for Albert Bell.
Albert Bell, the Indians, the White Sox, and the Orioles.
What's the schedule look like for you this week, sir?
Well, I'll be up at Towson tonight, and then Georgetown and Connecticut on Saturday, Maryland, Penn State on Sunday, George Mason and GW in a really good game.
Mason's really good, right?
On Monday. And then I think Navy and Holy Cross next Wednesday.
Very good. At Discourse. That's how you follow him, D1S Course on Twitter and Blue Sky. Pactrick Stevens, always appreciate you, brother. We'll talk again next week, all right?
Thanks, Glenn. Good talking to you, Kyle.
How many miles do you think Pactrick puts on his car in a year?
Oh, I know. I happen to know. I used to do a lot of these trips with Pactrick. Like I used to.
Oh,
he
dear.
he would like. Pactrick and I have been very close friends for a long time, and so Pactrick and we even sometimes still make baseball trips together in the summer. Like he'll call me and be like, Patrick's really smart about how he does it. He'll pitch me and be like, hey man, because I don't know if you know this about Pactrick, he's a bobblehead collector on top of it, and so he would like identify a weekend where the Reds and the Guardians were both home, and he'd say, you want to hop on a Saturday morning flight to Columbus with me, and we'll go to the Reds game Saturday night, and we'll go to the Guardians game on Sunday. And I did this once when it was the Orioles and the Guardians on Sunday, and I'd be like, I don't know. He'd be like, well, you know, the ATP Tour event's going on in Cincinnati too, and I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch, I'm there. Like,
how does he do
You got
this?
me. No one prepares and plans the way that Pactrick Stevens plans. Like, he not only does he plan like this is the flight we need to take, this is the hotel we need to stay in, this is where we need to go for food. He's got it all mapped out ahead of time to take all of the like. By the time you're involved, I went out with him to what's the I think Hagerstown. We went out to Hagerstown for a Arthur Rhodes bobblehead night. There, yeah, look at that beautiful Arthur Rhodes bobblehead sitting back there. We went out to Hagerstown last year, and he knew exactly where we should stop on the way to go get some barbecue. Like, he meticulous in his planning.
Where'd you guys go for barbecue?
I wish I could remember the name of the
come on.
place.
Should I
Text
call
him.
Patrick
Yeah,
back?
he'll tell you. He'll tell you what it was. And it was great. It was wonderful. He knew exactly what he was doing. He's never led me astray. In fact, the only time we've ever had a miss, it was my fault.
I believe it.
Because we went somewhere when we were in Cleveland once, we went somewhere and it wasn't even that it was a miss. It was actually the place was very good.
Well, the miss was going to Cleveland. Yeah.
No, yeah, that part. But the miss was I was led to believe that we should try the pig's feet.
Oh,
and
dear.
yeah, I'm good.
The trotters.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right.
Can I share one food take?
Yes. You can
Skyline
share,
chili
you can share
is
all
the
of the food
most
takes.
overrated
Ah.
pile of
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
that exists in this world. I went to Cincinnati about 10 years ago for a Xavier game and totally bought in. Like, let's try this Skyline chili. Let's get a chili dog. Let's get the pasta or whatever. I forget what it's called off the top, but just overboiled pasta. Too much something in that chili, like the not spicy, but like
I believe the word you're looking for
cinnamon.
is diarrhea. Too much diarrhea in that chili.
And then just like the cheapest, grossest, non-melting cheese you can imagine, all slathered. It was terrible.
What you're bringing up is very interesting to me, because I agree with you about the chain Skyline chili, but I religiously agree with the concept of spaghetti and chili, which was something that I had never tried as a kid. And then I think the first time I went to Cincinnati, I tried it, not Skyline. There was another place that we went to that someone out there had recommended to us, and I thought it was wonderful. And I religiously agree with loading it up with cheese and onions and all those things. I just think that Skyline
bad.
It's the Taco Bell version of that.
But it's their thing. It's their signature thing. It's like show me.
But you know what I would argue, and maybe we call Rocky Boyman about this topic. I think it's sort of like what Philly people say about Geno's or Pat's. Like, yes, we do cheesesteaks, but you go to Geno's. We don't go to Geno's. You go to Geno's.
That might be true, but at the same time, it's like I could eat a Geno's or Pat's, and I have eaten a Geno's and Pat's cheesesteak. I did it back to back when I was obviously in my 20s. I could not do that now. Decent cheesesteak, good cheesesteak.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's
Skyline
okay.
chili, bad. Skyline chili, if their business model is serving this food, that place should not exist. It is terrible.
Yeah, It looks right. That picture makes you say, "I'd try that." Right? Like, I try that, and you would.
No,
and by the way,
don't do it.
There's noodles underneath.
Yes, it's it's like a spaghetti essentially. There's spaghetti noodles.
So it's almost like
spaghetti
meat sauce
product.
Yes, and then
You
chili.
know that SNL skit
ton of
that's like,
cheese.
it's like pizza.
Right.
It's almost pizza.
Why isn't it?
That's
so it's
almost
pizza.
spaghetti. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you in theory, but again, I really do feel like it's closer to the Geno's Pats argument than you're giving it credit for. I would not go to Geno's or Pats now as an adult. I'll go to John's Roast Pork any day of the week. We could drive if that's where you wanted to go for
lunch.
lunch.
That's actually my other take.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia, the roast pork with the broccoli rabe, that is the better Philadelphia sandwich.
You're not going to get any ounce of argument of me out of that. It is perfection.
Throw a little higher beans, Glenn.
Throw a little hot sauce on there. My God, you have something brilliant. But I'm not going to argue with, in fact, the cheesesteak at John's Roast Pork is still freaking. That was a Tony Saragusa recommendation to me once upon a time.
Goose.
Tony Saragusa. We were talking about Philly, and I think I was like a Tony Luke's at the time was my go-to. He was like, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "I don't know, man. It's just where I've gone." And so he recommended strongly John's Roast Pork, and I am so glad that he did because that has become my place over the years. Love John's Roast Pork. All right, the Ravens need a coach. What did you make of the response that you got? Well, actually, I think it was Jonas that asked the question, right, about disqualifying. It was Jonas who asked that question on Tuesday, and how almost unprovoked Steve really dove in on the failed head coaches that are a part of the mix right now.
Yeah, sorry, you guys are gonna play this clip, but
I can.
I
appreciate that Griffin's been attempting to produce. I do appreciate that.
No.
He's also attempting to show. This is young Xavier. Did you know that we're going to be playing a Xavier game on Tuesday as well? Because Xavier's filling in for Griffin on Tuesday.
Oh boy!
And he's never produced the show before. And it's not like we're in the middle of a Ravens coaching search and the numbers have been through the roof recently or anything like that. No nervousness whatsoever about Xavier stepping in on Tuesday. Supreme confidence.
He's asking good questions. He's dialed in.
So
right now.
Griffin's trying to show him how we do things.
But I felt like Steve had an understanding that our best candidate may be a retread coach, and retread is such a loaded word because you get one job and all of a sudden you're a retread. Even if you get the job in Cleveland or Miami, like all of a sudden you're a retread. If you coach the Jets, you're a retread. It's like maybe you had zero chance to succeed in that market. Certainly if you're the Jets coach, you have zero chance to succeed. So I really felt like Steve was laying the groundwork for if we find the best guy as a retread, we're going to hire him. And we don't want people to think less of him. So I think that, the coaching cycle that Steve was saying, we're going to get the best guy. We think we have the best opening. Those things may be true. I don't think the candidates are as strong as they have been in some past years. I mean, if you wanted Ben Johnson, he's now off the board. If you wanted Shane Steichen, he's now off the board. There's just a bunch of guys who have sort of been sort of like, okay, this guy is like this guy's gonna be a great head coach. We know it, or gonna have a good chance. I don't know if there's a guy on the board right now that I love. If I'm Steve, but so I kind of feel like he's like, you know what, we are gonna lay the groundwork to if we think somebody who's gotten a head coaching job, and Brian Flores and Robert Saleh really leaped to front of mind on those. Did Robert Saleh really have a chance after Aaron Rodgers went down? Probably not. Did Brian Flores? I mean, even though there's certain comments about his personality and how
Ryan Fitzpatrick, obviously, in particular.
Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua were not big fans of his. But that being said, like, I think he got fired after a winning season. Is that right?
The last one was the last one a winning season because
he won like 8 games in a row or something.
It might have
to
been.
end it. Like they didn't have a chance to make the playoffs. But I mean, Brian Flores, his tenure in Miami is not quite as bad as you would think.
It was 9-8 in the last season.
9-8. So he technically had a winning season.
Right, when they did rally late in the year and they knocked somebody out of the playoffs. Maybe the Raiders, they knocked him out of the playoffs to win late.
Like that.
I would. It's funny because I'm a Stefanski guy, right? Like he's not number one on my list, but I'm very much I think it's a miracle to make 2 playoff trips in Cleveland. To me, that's the concept. It's the exchange rate is maybe making 2 Super Bowl trips, or the real franchise is making 2 playoff trips in Cleveland. I I like Kevin Stefanski. I have still questions about what happened with Shedeur. I spent some time this week chatting with Gerard Cherry, their radio guy, about, what was it as bad as we think it was? Was it, and he made the argument that it's not at all what you think it was, and that they were privately meeting together every week with Kevin Stefanski trying to help him out. So that would be something that I would think Lamar, it's funny, we brought up Lamar Jackson and his involvement. I would think he would want to have answers about that. I know what you're saying about like the rock star coaching candidates, but I don't think that any of us believe Liam Cohen was that guy last year.
I will say the only thing I knew about Liam Cohen for the longest time was how he said Duval. And that really, really turned me off.
Of course.
His tenure. But of course,
it's the one thing anybody down there cares about, and you can't get it right on day one.
Lynn Jones asked a tough question about how Liam Cohen says Duval.
100%. And so I thought he was a joke. I thought he was a punch. It turns out he's a hell of a coach. And that's sort of where I am. Where I don't know why Clint Kubiak isn't a rock star. And I'm not saying he is. I have no idea. But I don't know why we wouldn't think of him that way. What's not to like about Clint Kubiak?
I'll say this. I with the Clint Kubiak and Jesse Minter, this isn't really about them. But I had this paranoia about the Ravens franchise where, I'm sure you were hearing this 2 years ago. People were telling me 2 years ago, you should write that they should fire John
and just replace him
with Mike McDonald. And I'm sorry, no franchise in the history of franchises has ever been run that way, especially not the Baltimore Ravens, which is this bedrock of stability within all pro sports. But I fear that by trying to hire the Jesse Minter, who is seen as sort of the Mike McDonald of right now, even though he's 8 years older or something like that than Mike McDonald, or trying to hire Clint Kubiak, who's Mike's OC, you're sort of trying to relitigate what you may have felt should have been done 2 years ago. I don't want the Ravens to get caught in that trap of I was texting with somebody today about remember how Sean McVay got hired and he was this wonderkind and he goes and wins the Super Bowl, and 6 or 7 years ago, I think, maybe even more recent than that, everyone was obsessed with
we're gonna get
getting a little piece of the Sean McVay. And guess what? The Sean McVay tree is not Sean McVay. A couple years ago, everyone thought Kliff Kingsbury was the next Sean McVay. Guess what? He's not. Right? So it's just
although he was with the Cardinals, and how do you measure that? This goes back to the retread conversation.
But let's not get too deep into it. It's just there's one Sean McVay. There's one Mike McDonald.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
And I don't want and I think it was somewhat encouraging that Steve is saying we're going to grade everybody on a curve. We're going to try to have more understanding for people who have been in an organization and make it, like the Weavers and also Jesse, make it, I read it as make it a little harder for them to kind of just ace their interview because, of course, they're going to interview well. But I'm just afraid that the Ravens are trying to recapture the McDonald magic, and he's in Seattle now. He may win a Super Bowl this year. We can't get Mike McDonald back from 2 years ago. So don't fall in the trap of trying to break off a piece of the McDonald tree just because you think you might capture lightning in a bottle twice.
It's interesting. That's interesting. Do you make anything of they would be better suited to have an experienced head coach because they are trying to win a Super Bowl right now?
Yeah. And I do think, even though Steve said he has patience, bro, he's trying to win 2 Super Bowls in the next 10 years.
Yeah, he just fired John Harbaugh, right?
He knows the Lamar Jackson window is a window. He used the word window. So we understand there's some urgency. So I do think you're not looking for a build from the ground up coach. You're not looking for all right, we're going to overhaul everything we do. And clearly he has affinity for what John Harbaugh did. So I think, with the Ozzie Newsome, Eric DaCosta, Sashi Brown DNA in there's got to be probably more demand for a coach who can kind of adapt a little bit to the Ravens way. So I kind of see a lot of merit to just on-field stuff I'm talking about. Brian Flores, Robert Saleh, and, if you can hire a great OC out of that, or, to me, if you can find a way to partner a retread, quote-unquote, retread defensive coach with Mike McDaniel, now you're cooking with gas. Now you're doing something pretty interesting. So I don't know. I mean, Stefanski's an interesting one. Obviously, familiarity with the division.
Yep.
I think that has value. But I do think it's a little weird to hire, to fire one of the division's best coaches and like, all right, we're going to go in division for, a quote unquote lesser coach. Maybe it is contextual. Maybe he's not really lesser than John Harbaugh, but he's coming off what he's coming off. So
what about because the two names that you just brought up there, Flores and Saleh, obviously are defensive guys. And I will admit that I subscribe to the theory that a lot of people do, which is my preference is that you have an offensive-minded head coach because I am perpetually living in fear of, as you say, you pair him with Mike McDaniel, it goes well for a year, and then Mike McDaniel's the head coach again, and here you are looking for an offensive mind, and you're just as likely to find one that doesn't work out as you are to find one that does. And I get it. They didn't find their last defensive coordinator hire did not go well for them, but I do think it has been historically easier to find defensive coordinators or for your defensive coordinator to stick around for a little while than it is to find offensive coordinators. Do you make anything of that whatsoever?
I personally feel, and maybe you want to call this dysfunction, but it just is how it is. Whoever you put over the offense, Lamar Jackson is going to have more power than that person. And to me, like, let's say you bring in Mike McDaniel, and I think if you paired Mike McDaniel with Lamar Jackson, the overwhelming expectation is that they would succeed, right? And so you're in that problem where, okay, a year or two from now, Mike McDaniel is a head coach again, and you got to replace him.
Mm-hmm.
What if whoever the next OC gets paired with Lamar Jackson goes bad? What if you get a guy like, let's say it's Kliff Kingsbury, just because I can see the failure a little more clearly. Not that Kliff is a bad coach, but I could see that not working out, right? Then you gotta probably get rid of that OC, right? Like, and so you're in the same problem, but with a different outcome, different results. So if you hired an offensive-minded head coach, if you hired Stefanski and the offense isn't working out, does that mean you have to fire Kevin Stefanski?
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
So that's kind of where my mind goes, because I'm sort of I've seen seasons crash and burn. I covered the LeBron-era Lakers when he arrived in L.A. and when he got paired with Westbrook, and there were huge expectations, and they just did not work out, and you got to fire people, right? And I just think if there's going to be a little less pressure on a defensive head coach if you have to make a change in the offense because Lamar Jackson is the most powerful person on this roster and potentially more powerful than whoever's going to go call plays. I mean, we just saw evidence that that's true, right? With Todd Monken. Like, we just saw evidence that Lamar Jackson means more to this franchise than Todd Monken does. So I think whoever is calling plays or whoever is in charge of the offense is going to have a lot of pressure. So I don't know if you want that on your head coach.
We will grab a break. We'll come back in. We'll get a tidbit, tubular, and then we'll learn a little bit more about Kliff Kingsbury to wrap it up. It is a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio with Kyle Goon in studio. Get in the game with Volo Sports. With over 15 sports to choose from, join a league or grab a Volo membership for discounted play, free daily pickups, fitness classes, and exclusive events. But the best part? A portion of every league fee helps the Volo Kids Foundation provide free sports to over 5,000 kids across Baltimore City each year. Don't miss out. Early pricing for the winter season ends December 12th. Final registration deadline is January 15th. Sign up now at volosports.com/Baltimore.
This January, go for the gold at Live Casino and enter to win the ultimate winter experience. Earn the entire month of January, and on Saturday, January 24th, you could be one of 25 lucky winners to take their place on the podium and win a share of $50,000 in prizes, including a trip to the 2026 Winter Games in Milano Cortina. Let the games begin at Live Casino. At Arundel Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The weather's getting cooler, so when you and your family are picking out a place to dine, be it lunch or dinner, let's make it nice and easy. Now, with 2 great locations, the Costas Inn remains your #1 destination. Whether you want to get steamed crabs and the full Costas menu out at the original location at 4100 North Point Boulevard, or sample the complete menu minus the steamed crabs at the new location above the grandstand at the Timonium Racetrack, Costas is your place to go. Check out the website costasin.com for a look at the menu, and if you want to plan that crab feast, call 410-477-1975. The Costas Inn.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Looking for Baltimore's premier waterfront dining experience? Head to Nick's Fish House, located in the Baltimore Peninsula. Enjoy crabs all year long, plus happy hour Monday through Thursday from 3 to 6. Planning a celebration? From rehearsal dinners to corporate crab feasts, Nick's is the spot to make it unforgettable. And the fun doesn't stop there. Live music fills the air every Thursday through Sunday. Check out the full lineup at nicksfishhouse.com. Nick's, it's where Baltimore comes to eat, drink, and play by the water.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
And Kyle Goon in studio today from the Baltimore Banner. Everything you need to know about high school sports, countysports.zone's got scores, schedules, rankings, polls, everything you want to know. Go there right now. It's proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. I know, right, we did not thank you, Griffin. We did not talk about Ranger Suarez signing with the Red Sox. He was not at the top of my list for the Orioles this offseason, but I did think that maybe there was a world in which, like, if there was a practical, like, this is a number they'd be willing to spend, 5 and 130 seems like the amount of money that the Orioles should have been willing to spend to get a top-notch starting pitcher. So that part of it is disappointing. It's also disappointing that he ends up in the division. Like, that's no good. I obviously would have preferred, to me, Michael King was always the guy that was at the top of my list. Certainly would prefer Framber Valdez still to this day. Don't think that's happening. It seems like there's a number that Framber Valdez wants, and
I think the buzz has been about the years for the Orioles. I think, and I mean, maybe Pete Alonso changes everyone's goalposts a little bit because they're like, oh, now we're in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think all this is an evolution. And it's not that Mike Elias all of a sudden became a different person, even though it might feel like it. And the Orioles don't love giving out contracts with a lot of years.
I think that's why the Michael King one was so disappointing to me, because it's 3 one-year contracts. Like, that to me seems like the contract that the Orioles should have been very comfortable giving. And who else got that? The 3 1-year deals, or another pitcher got 3 years with every year having an opt-out, and I can't remember which one it was. This offseason, there were 2 different pitchers who got those deals, and I'm blanking on who the other one was. I
heard they came in at the Red Sox came in the Ranger Suarez meeting. It's like, well, if you go to Baltimore, you're gonna have to deal with Glenn Clark, right?
Yeah, and then they said, forget it, I'm out.
Glenn Clark and the Baltimore Banner. Nah, who wants to deal with that?
I know what you're saying about the Orioles to the Orioles. This does go back to you can't keep pretending like you can compete with your own set of rules. And this is the Mike Elias issue, and that, like, whatever hubris Mike Elias has, the evidence does not back it up. He has not gamed the system. He has not proven that he can figure this out in a way that other people can't. That evidence is not there. And so if it's him saying to the Orioles, we don't need to give out those types of deals, I'm telling you, they don't work. You're not proving that you can work without giving out those types of deals. You're only allowing for the inability to compete with teams that are willing.
It's so tough. And listen, I mean, I've railed against Mike as much as anyone. Well, maybe not as much as anyone, but I've railed against Mike a good amount.
Think of somebody.
But, you know, I think the problem with Mike in this front office is what served you well in the rebuild: hoarding, being very disciplined, not signing above market deals. That's good for a rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the positive reinforcement of 2022, 2023, 2024, and you're sort of like, oh, the way we did things really worked. But when you get to that plateau, which the Orioles are at, where you are a good team that is having no playoff success, you just got to change. You got to flip your behavior, and you got to flip some of your instincts that served you well when you were rebuilding the team, and you got positive reinforcement for. So you think like, oh, our way of doing business worked. But like you said, you don't game the system. This is just the system.
Yep.
When you rebuild, you have to be disciplined. You have to hoard picks. You're a small market team. You got to do things a little differently than the Red Sox or the Yankees. Now that you're trying to beat those teams to win a championship,
Yes, you have to compete with them.
you gotta flip the switch. So it's hard for me to like just say like, okay, Mike Elias is derelict of duty in the way he's doing this, because it is just a total change in philosophy. So I am somewhat moved by them doing this Pete Alonso deal. I think a lot of people were.
Yes, of course.
But it's just, you got to keep doing it.
Right.
You got to keep it. It's not going to serve you at all to do a half measure. It's not going to serve you at all to do one move and then not follow it up with more. You just got to do more.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I would recognize that they can't do all of them. They're not going to sign everybody, and I understand that. I don't even know if that's the answer, although it's certainly working out quite well for the Los Angeles Dodgers. But to your point, you can't just say we'll never sign a pitcher to X number of years. That can't be the answer, because you're not going to be able to compete. Everything, I say you're not going to be able to. Everything has to go right. Your margin for error is zero otherwise. Everything has to work. Kyle Bradish has to be ready to be an ace for an entire major league season. Trevor Rogers has to be extremely close to what he was. Shane Baz has to be the best version of Shane Baz. All of it has to work, and the likelihood of that is very small.
What you're doing when you add more guys with more money is you're taking on more risk, but you're adding, it's not so marginal. It's not so like last year you go in, it's like, okay, well, Charlie Morton has to be a better version of Charlie Morton, and Tomoyuki Sagano has to be like kind of, a reasonable fourth or fifth. Like all those margins are so narrow, and they only influence winning like this tiny amount.
Yep.
But if Pete Alonso hits, that's huge for your offense. That's huge for your offense. And then, if you get a more big time starter, you add, a 1, 2, or 3 starter to this mix. That's huge.
Yep.
Like you increase the margins of in any given season, everything has to hit pretty well for you to have a chance at a championship.
That's
right?
the reality.
But you're increasing your margins for error. You're sort of like, it's not all on. I mean, the Dodgers had a completely banged up starting rotation.
Correct.
For most of last year.
But they had 9 starting pitchers. It helps to have 9.
Like, you can't, obviously, if you're the Orioles, you can't do all that. But you can spend more to make those margins a little bit more manageable.
Correct.
Because the way they went into last year, they were sort of, everything went wrong. But when everything went wrong, they didn't have enough difference makers. Or it was like, oh, well, we can overcome these issues.
All right. And Griffin's very excited because Clayton Kershaw is going to pitch in the World Baseball Classic.
Is he really?
Yeah.
I didn't see that yet.
Which it's okay.
Really? Let's go.
Because his arm can fall off. Because you could actually pitch. Now, I don't know that you want him to, because I don't know how good he is at pitching anymore. But you could.
I want to win.
Unlike the other pitchers, you could just let him throw 30 innings if it goes that
is
deep.
Is Dean
in a
Kramer
game.
going to pitch for Israel?
He is.
You know?
He is pitching for
good.
Israel.
Good.
All right, let's get a tidbit. Tidbit is brought to you today by the best of issue of Press Box, which is still available at your Baltimore area High's Dairy stores. It's free. top people performances and moments of 2025 inside this print issue of PressBox. You can also read it all at PressBoxOnline.com.
Saw this stat going around yesterday. Bo Nix becomes one of 2 quarterbacks in his first 2 NFL seasons to have 20 wins, 7,000 pass yards, 50 touchdowns, 50 passing touchdowns.
Who is the other one?
Yes.
First 2 seasons.
First 2 NFL seasons, 7,000 passing yards, 50 touchdowns.
And 20 wins.
20 wins.
Within his first 2 seasons. Matt Ryan.
Not Matt
Ryan. Go ahead.
Is it first 2 seasons as a starter or first 2 seasons
First
as
two-
a starter?
First 2 NFL
so it won't
seasons.
be Patrick Mahomes.
No.
I was
And
going to say Jordan Love.
yeah, it
but
won't be a Packers quarterback
Although
for sure.
Mahomes almost did win 20 games his second year. So
It's true. He did
Dan,
almost.
Dan Marino.
Dan Marino is the
Not
answer.
bad. Look at
Well
you
done,
over
Kyle.
there. Look at you.
And then people are trying to, poo-poo on Bo Nix, and then they also point out that apparently Bo Nix also has the most punts through a quarterback's first 2 NFL seasons. Most 153 drives ending in a punt is the most in a quarterback's first 2 seasons.
kind of random.
Yeah.
They're calling me the Pactrick Stevens of that
That's what
question.
of that question. Yes, correct. Of Bo Nix. You are the Patrick Stevens of Bo Nix. Well done. Well done, sir. Here's what's coming up tonight, tubular-wise. It's brought to you by the Costas Inn, who's a proud sponsor of the Stand the Fan Variety Hour. Don't forget, 1 week from tonight, January 22nd, the great Rick Dempsey is going to be hanging out at the OG Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard in Dundalk from 6 to 8 p.m. Just taking pictures, kissing babies, signing autographs. Rick Dempsey, a hero in this community. Love Rick Dempsey. Uncle Rick's going to be there from 6 to 8 at the original Costas Inn next Thursday night. Just hanging out. Everything is free. Plus, you can get delicious Costas Inn food while you're there. Get some that location. They do steamed crabs as well all year round at the Costas Inn. Tonight, as we mentioned, Towson, big one against Charleston, 8 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Are you going to go get your bobblehead? Oh, you're
I'm
flying.
leaving.
You're
Yeah,
leaving.
I'm
You're
leaving
getting
tonight.
out of
I'm going to
town.
have to text somebody and put one aside for me.
Leaving on your jet plane.
Something for Xavier to get for you?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Send Xavier over.
Head out there.
Then he's
Get
filling
my
in.
bobblehead.
That's
I
his
need
job.
it.
Maryland women are at USC at 9 o'clock, trying to bounce back after a bummer of a loss on Sunday where they raced out to a big lead and then end up injuries catching up to them. But they're at USC tonight, 9 o'clock on Peacock. UMBC's at Bryant, 6 o'clock on ESPN+. Everything else, you can go to glennclarkradio.com and find it there, non-sports-wise.
We got new episodes of The Pit, The Traders.
Yes.
It's Animal Control.
I do like that show. I
and
can't
it's
lie.
season 2 premiere of Going Dutch as well on Fox.
Oh, that's back?
Yeah, Going Dutch is back.
Oh, I thought they got rid of it because
and
nobody was
then
watching it.
Peacock, this show looks pretty good, actually.
I like
called,
so many dumb shows.
Called Ponies on Peacock. It's set in 1977 Moscow, where Amelia Clark and Haley Lou Richardson play embassy secretaries who are recruited by the CIA after their husbands are killed. It looks pretty good, actually. They are recruited as like spies, and they're ponies because they're persons of no interest, and that's why
got it.
they want women.
I think it's interesting that the 2 shows you really reacted to are Animal Control and Going Dutch, which have 2 loudmouths.
That is true. Dennis Leary and Joel McHale.
Do you think a radio guy would have anything in common?
Yeah, I guess it does. Then he doesn't like real shows like The Pit or The Traders, both.
Real shows? Dang.
The Pit and The Traders, he said, are the real shows.
They are.
The Traders. He has on that list.
Critically acclaimed, yeah.
We're doing a book club, Rita and Glenn. We're taping tonight, and it's Murder in Monaco for book club this week. Oh, yeah, Griffin watched it with me yesterday.
Yeah.
It was compelling.
Yes, that's
it
the
was
word.
compelling.
That's the word. I'm still confused, I think.
I'm not really at the end. That was
well, maybe because I wasn't paying attention.
We're talking about it at book club tonight. We're not doing anything else. We'll talk about it at book club. Kyle Goon, thank you for coming in and hanging out with us.
Jokers tonight. Is back too.
Okay,
that's the biggest one actually.
Sure isn't. It's such a dumb thing that he likes.
Best show. So.
At Kyle Goon is how you follow him. Baltimore Banner is where you see his stuff. Appreciate you, bud. Thanks for coming in here and hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me. A lot of fun.
Thanks today to as well to Pactrick Stevens and to Logan Paulsen, the Commanders analyst, who we're about to hear from to tell us more about Kliff Kingsbury. We'll get it up in the greatest hits section of the
Marcelo Hernandez and Jason Momoa will be on Fallon.
Tab at glennclarkradio.com.
Good one.
Tomorrow on the program, Stan's back in studio with us.
Yes.
Anything else?
talk a little baseball.
Oh, yeah. Janet Marie Smith
Yeah,
is going to join us
Janet
tomorrow. Anytime Janet Marie Smith wants to talk, she reaches out and she says, I want to come on the show. I let Janet Marie Smith come on the show. I don't care what it is. She said, I want to talk about the Traders. I'd say, you know what? For you, I'll do that.
I guess.
Janet Marie Smith is a legend, and she literally built the stadium that we love. So anything she wants to do, she's involved with an event next week here in town. I think it's a Sabre event that she's involved with. She's going to tell us about that. We'll just talk baseball with Janet Marie Smith, stuff and things, and as well on the program. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners. Thanks to Xavier, who's going to be in with us on Tuesday. Have a great Thursday night. Go Towson, UMBC, Maryland women. Duke sucks. We wrap up today's show. This is Logan Paulsen from a little bit earlier on today, Commanders radio analyst on another of the Baltimore Ravens head coaching candidates, Kliff Kingsbury, right here on GCR. We continue to try to dive in on the various head coaching candidates for the Baltimore Ravens as they look for their replacement for John Harbaugh. And our next guest is a radio analyst and former NFL tight end for the Washington Commanders. He's going to tell us a little bit more about Kliff Kingsbury. He is Logan Paulsen, and he's with us here on GCR. Logan, it's Glenn here in Baltimore. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning. Really appreciate you doing this.
No, my pleasure, man. Excited to talk some ball.
Logan, I wonder if we could start. If you were to explain to you what it is that Kliff Kingsbury in Washington, what he did for the Commanders offensively, for Jaden Daniels, how would you best try to explain that?
Yeah, what I think he did is something that every offensive coordinator, every offensive mind with a young quarterback strives to do, is he found a system that was relatively straightforward, relatively simple, with a clear vision that spoke to the player's skill set. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people kind of ignore in the conversation about Kliff, is I think while it is in the context of this NFL spread, air raid background, like when you talk to the guys in the building, they love Kliff. They love the collaborative nature that he brought. They love kind of saying, oh, like, you know, Jaden Daniels being like, I don't really love this. Let's take that out. And again, like, that's something that I think is really special that he does, that I think every coach, like I mentioned, is aspiring to do. So at the highest of levels, he found a system that spoke to the player's skill sets and had a very clear identity, even though it might have been a little bit untraditional for 2024 and 2025.
Can you, like, did you get a sense at all of what his experience in Arizona may have done, how he might have been changed, bettered, what you made of how that maybe impacted him and made him different as a coach?
Yeah, I think one of the things about Kliff is, like, you know, I've only had a couple brief conversations with him, and obviously we get the media availability. Is the thing that sticks out to me most is I felt like he's the guy that loves football, is passionate about football, and obviously, like, when he was in Arizona, I think he maybe got away from just being able to coach ball all the time. Like, there's an administrative capacity to being a head coach, which some people respond to really well, and I think Kliff did a fine job with it, but I also think it detracted from the thing that he loved most to do. And so coming back to Washington, kind of reinvigorating his passion for football, for the offensive side of the game, I thought was really cool, and it's something that I think he mentioned multiple times while he was here in Washington.
Kliff, obviously, you know, you guys had that exceptional 2024 season. I know this year the biggest story was Jaden Daniels' injury and not being on the field. Injuries, I guess we would describe it, but was that the only story? Were there other issues? Like, are there things that we would be concerned about related to what the Commanders did offensively this year if Kliff Kingsbury ends up being the next head coach of the Baltimore Ravens?
You know, I just think obviously the injuries were a huge issue in terms of kind of the offensive regression, but I do think it's important to call out that, like, despite not having, you know, 3 of the 4 starting wide receivers, despite kind of a, you know, carousel on the offensive line, despite not having your starting quarterback, they still ended up being the 12th offensive ranked offense in the NFL and the 5th highest rated rushing attack. So there were a lot of elements there that were really positive. I do think in terms of, like, why Kliff is no longer in Washington, I think you look at kind of, there was a little bit of disagreement, like healthy disagreement between the head coach and Kliff. Like, Kliff has a very clear offensive vision, and Dan wanted to change it for the betterment of the team, he felt. And so I do think that was, if you're looking for anything that's kind of like, why is Kliff no longer in Washington? I think it's that Kliff has a very specific way he wants to do things, which is, I think, justified because he's been very successful with that. And again, it goes against, kind of historic offensive convention. He's the guy that builds the pass game out first, kind of quick game, quick screens to then supplement the rushing attack. And again, that's a little bit unconventional at the NFL level. But again, I don't think you can argue with the success that he's had over the last 2 years.
And particularly, I guess there'd be questions about the fit given a Derrick Henry-based offense. But I think the flip side of that would be that it's hard to not talk about the success that he has had with more mobile quarterbacks, obviously, with Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray. And how unique a fit do you think that might be should he be given the opportunity to partner with Lamar Jackson?
Well, it's interesting. Everyone thinks of Kliff as a pass-first guy. And again, we just talked about how he kind of builds his offense from a pass-first perspective. But they do run the football a ton, right? He's had a couple guys. I think James Conner in Arizona was a 1,500-yard rusher, if I remember correctly. So, and obviously we had a lot of success this year in Washington with him running the football. So I do think, and the thing he does seem to like is having bigger backs that can get downhill and take advantage of light box counts. And what I mean by that is he's going to get in different formations. He's going to spread you out. He's going to force you to displace defenders from the box. And then you get that big body running downhill. I think that might be a very interesting fit. Now, I think Derrick Henry likes to run from the gun, from the dot, pistol a little bit more. So do you modify some of that stuff? Will be interesting to see what happens. But I do think Kliff's reputation speaks for itself in terms of his ability to maximize and speak to quarterbacks. It's unparalleled in terms of his ability to come into a room and get the most out of a guy. I think we look at, Kyler Murray now compared to what he was with Kliff, totally different football player, right? Jaden Daniels year one was absolutely fantastic, literally an historic rookie season. And obviously Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, his pedigree with quarterbacks, the way he communicates with quarterbacks is on a different level. And I think a big part of it is because you get in these simplistic formations, you spread guys out, you let the quarterback identify best matchup. You give the quarterback a lot of autonomy at the line of scrimmage and let them getting the best look, and quarterbacks like that. They like making themselves look good, and I think because Kliff played quarterback, he understands a lot of the limitations and the difficulties of the position, and I think he does a really good job of speaking to players who play that way and can maximize them.
He is Logan Paulsen, Commanders radio analyst, former tight end. He's with us here on GCR. Logan, I think if we're being frank, Kliff Kingsbury, there's this sort of national feeling that he was this hot shot, sexy name. And look, I'll add on it, he's also very handsome. And so I think there are a lot of people that root for guys like that to fail and are willing to maybe make them a bit of a punchline when they do fail. I wonder what you make of sort of the national perspective of Kliff Kingsbury and why perhaps people are wrong about what it is that he might have to offer as a head coach.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't disagree with the national narrative that Kliff is very handsome, and you'll see that probably firsthand when he comes in for his interviews. I think this is the thing I appreciate about Kliff. I was a guy that my whole career was a fringe roster guy, had to work my tail off to be around, and so I expect guys that are consummate workers and consummate professionals. And I think people see the nice suits, they see the perfect jawline, and they say that guy doesn't know anything about getting his hands dirty. He's in the building at 4:30 every day here, or he was every day, and he would be the last guy to leave. And so that dude he loves football. He's passionate about football, and he's willing to do the dirty work to be great at football. And everyone talks about Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and honestly, when he came here, I was not expecting to see that type of work and just passion for the game. And that's what Kliff brings. And are there shortcomings and limitations to what he does offensively and his offensive perspective? Sure, but show me an offensive coordinator where there's not limitations, and I don't think that exists, right? Every offense has limitations, and just about continuing to evolve and continuing to progress. And I think Kliff has the passion for the game, and to me, as a head coach, as an offensive coordinator, whatever it may be, that is extremely important. You want that guy to kind of be leading the battle, saying this, follow me. I'm here to work. I'm here to get you guys better. And I think players respond and resonate with that quite a bit.
One of the things that Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti discussed this week was looking at candidates who, have been head coaches and had losing records, but in maybe unique circumstances where they were up against it a little bit more, and his belief that the Ravens wouldn't be that type of circumstance for those candidates. And I guess now in hindsight, what we know about Kyler Murray and what we've always known about maybe the Cardinals organization and some of the limitations they have, when you look at Kliff Kingsbury's time there, do you feel like it's not a fair reflection of who he is as a coach?
I mean, I think it'd be interesting to ask Kliff that question. I think, there are certain places where it's easier to win, like just historically. And I think Arizona has a difficult time, obviously. And again, there was a lot of friction there in terms of like what the GM was doing, the direction the GM thought the team should go. And Kliff being a first-time head coach, I think kind of was left holding the bag a little bit for some of that responsibility. And again, that happens all the time. That's not an indictment of them specifically. But I do think one of the things about Baltimore, at least since I've been playing and since I've been covering the league, is they're incredibly consistent with their perspective on who they want to be. And so I think like if they're okay with what Kliff brings and okay with his offensive perspective and his offensive identity, then I think this could be a great hire. But what I don't think they should do is like if you want to be a run first, downhill, traditional formation team, don't bring Kliff in to run that kind of offense, because that's not who he wants to be, right? So understanding if you're the Baltimore Ravens ownership, like what you're going to get. Like you are getting a guy who is a little bit of an outside the box thinker, who's going to do some innovative things on offense. It's going to look a little bit different than your traditional, power eye, 2 tight end, 3 tight end type of offense. And if you're okay with that, and if you're okay with that identity, then I think you should be okay with what Kliff brings. It
could be exciting. You referenced something earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm saying it the right way. You say, like, he wants to do things, kind of his way. Is that in management, or is that really like what you just alluded to in offense? Because I feel like some people would hear that and say, well, that sounds off-putting. Is he capable of working? Like the Ravens historically have always talked about collaboration, right? Like that there's not going to be one person who runs things. Is that something that Kliff Kingsbury can fit into from a leadership style?
Yeah, I mean, I think people hear collaboration, and I think they think of like this kumbaya moment. But like, quite honestly, like I want someone who's got a strong perspective, right? A strong offensive perspective, strong defensive perspective, and we can collaborate. But also, my perspective allows me to be a good editor of information. Like if we're collaborating on everything and I'm accepting every idea, we're going to get an offense or a defense that is a non-existence because there's no perspective, there's no vision to the thing. So I do think that like while Kliff is very clear in his perspective, I think some people can find that off-putting. I don't get the sense from talking to people in the building that it was anything that was like too austere. I think it was kind of fell within the range of normal. And I think I appreciate that Kliff is like, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I do. And again, we can modify and adjust because there's multiple games where you see a team that is a huge departure last year offensively from what traditionally would be Kliff Kingsbury. But I want a guy who believes in what they do, because that belief not only is important for himself, but it translates and transitions to the players. So I think all that stuff is, like people want, again, like this kumbaya offensive staff, but I want guys with strong opinions, strong perspectives that are competitive. And if it creates an environment where there's a little bit of healthy friction, I think that's totally fine.
I like that. I like everything about it. All right. Obviously, there's a big shakeup in the NFC East today. How much of a difference maker do you believe John Harbaugh is going to be in New York?
Oh, man, I think John Harbaugh, I don't know how you guys feel about him in Baltimore, obviously, after letting him go, but he's a guy that I think has done a great job of being that kind of CEO head coach, creating a strong culture and a strong identity for a long time. And I think one of the things that, again, we talk about strong perspectives and your ability to work with people and kind of have a clear identity. I think in that New York market, that's going to be really, really important, and I think what they've done there for a couple of years is hired guys that are first-time head coaches with not a lot of experience, and that market and that environment has really eaten them up. And I don't think that's going to be the case with John Harbaugh. So to see him go to New York, it is a little bit disconcerting because I think, he's a heck of a football coach, and I think he's going to do a lot of good things for the New York Giants.
He is Logan Paulsen. Logan, is there anything we can plug for you?
Yeah, check out all of it. I know we're in Baltimore, so I don't know how many Commanders fans you got, but check out, Take Command and the Command Center YouTube page and all those things where the Commanders focus stuff if you're a surviving Commanders fan in the Maryland area.
There you go. Logan Paulsen, of course, at Logan Paulsen NFL is how you follow him on Twitter. Really appreciate taking the time for us. I know you're up early out there in California. Thanks so much for doing it, and love to talk again in the future.
Thanks, man.